Hey everybody, I'm Melissa. I'm a home improvement DIYer, and in this video I am going to show you how to build cabinet boxes the easiest way I can think of. I'm currently building my kitchen island, and it's a lot of work to build cabinets from scratch, but I'm going to show you a method that mostly just uses a Kreg jig and pocket holes. I only have a small table saw, and so you can see here that I am setting up a straight edge with a 4-foot level to rip crosscuts on my pieces of plywood. I did have Home Depot rip these plywood sheets down a bit so they fit in my car better, but I didn't want to spend hours in the store potentially getting those measurements wrong, so I decided to cut them at home. You can also see that I used painter's tape because for crosscuts on plywood, it's really easy to get tear out, and a painter's tape laid down on your line just helps prevent that. As often as possible, I use my table saw with an 80-tooth blade on it to cut this plywood cleanly. It's obviously better if you are able to cut with the grain, then there's no tear out and your cabinets look even more professional. Now my Kreg jig isn't sold anymore, it's the K4 system, but there are so many options for drilling pocket holes out there. I'm going to link one in the description that I recommend. It's actually an off-brand and it's made of all metal, so it's super durable. I drilled so many pocket holes in these different pieces to assemble my cabinet boxes so they can all go together with strong joints, but my hardware is still going to be hidden. You can see here I did a lot of planning for my kitchen island and all of the dimensions that I would have to cut, but these are the 3 sheets of plywood I used to cut all of my sides for my boxes. I'm actually building 6 boxes, 3 of one style that are shelving, and then 3 on the front where I'm going to have drawers as well as a microwave drawer. So now it is time to sand. Plywood from the store does come sanded, but it's not great. And then when you make cuts on it, you usually need to come through and smooth everything out. So I'm coming at this with 120 grit sandpaper and my random orbital for hours and hours. It really took a long time. On the cabinet boxes where I'm going to have shelving and the inside of the cabinet will be used, I want to seal up that porous plywood. I did this by applying water-based polyurethane, and in between the 3 coats that I applied, I sanded with a very high grit sandpaper, and then I wiped off that fine dust and applied more poly. This process is going to leave a super smooth and wipeable surface for the inside of my cabinets. While the poly cured, I worked on assembling face frames. So on cabinets, you generally want a face frame so you have more options for your doors. If you don't do a face frame, you have to do a full overlay. In my cabinet box design, face frames are also going to help keep the boxes nice and square. My material is a 1x4 piece of red oak that I ripped down on my table saw in half, so each one is about 1 3/4 inches wide. The rails on my face frame will also get pocket screws. They're going to go together so easily this way. Even if you assemble your boxes a different way, most builders recommend using pocket screws to do the face frame anyway. Each one of these boards also got sanded, and honestly on this project I calculated I did almost 12 hours of sanding. I actually had to buy special anti-vibration gloves, which you see me wearing in this clip, because my wrists were aching so much. Okay, let's get to assembling our cabinet boxes. The first one we're going to do is the shelving that goes on the back side of my island. This is similar to like a wall upper cabinet. You can see I'm using corner clamps to hold my pieces of plywood tightly together at a perfect 90-degree angle. This helps keep my box square as I screw everything together through my pocket holes. The screwed together joint is the strongest when your screws are angled towards the meat of the piece of plywood instead of towards the edge. So you can see that I really planned that out when deciding where to place my pocket holes and how to cut my plywood pieces. The 2 shelves inside the cabinet box will also be attached with pocket holes underneath, so they will not be visible. Any longtime subscribers here that remember when I was pregnant in 2021? Well, now my toddler is handing me screws and learning to DIY too. I leveled the shelves after getting 1 screw into place and then tilted it down and secured them. Next up, we're going to assemble the boxes, which are going to hold drawers. These are going to be assembled a little differently. In order to save on plywood material and cost, I'm using stretchers instead of whole sheets of plywood. I don't need walls on these except for the 2 sides which the drawer slides will be mounted to. So I pre-assembled 2 scrap pieces of plywood at a 90-degree angle, and then that is going to get screwed in the back of my cabinet. Doing that ahead of time at a perfect right angle will help keep the whole box square with minimal plywood. The other 3 corners of the box also get stretchers that are just scrap pieces of plywood, and I turn them strategically so they will be completely hidden by either the face frame or they'll be in the back of the cabinet behind drawers where you never see them. This is, to me, the simplest and easiest way to put together a cabinet box if it's just going to be filled with drawers anyway. It's plenty strong, and you use up all of your 3/4 inch plywood scraps. You can see this particular stretcher that I'm mounting to the top of the box is going to be inset a bit. This is to actually create a shelf for a pull-out cutting board. You'll see more on that later. Now let's assemble the face frames. We're going to use a square and clamps in order to make sure that our face frames are put together in a perfect rectangle. I heard a tip that if you coat the end of your screws in wax, they go into hardwoods a bit easier. So I did that, and I was super happy to say that between that as well as clamping tightly and using a fine thread screw, I put together my face frames without any cracking, which oak is known for. I did not pre-drill into the receiving piece of wood. I just went carefully with my impact driver. So the vertical pieces of a face frame are called stiles, and then the horizontal pieces are called rails. You'll notice that all of my pocket holes are drilled into the rails just to simplify things. And this face frame you see here is the one that is going to have multiple drawers, so that's why there are multiple rails. Believe it or not, I am assembling these face frames on my current kitchen island. Heck, I'm getting rid of it soon, might as well use and abuse it. Before installing my face frames onto my cabinet boxes, I sanded all the way up to 180 grit, and I decided to pre-stain them. This is just going to make things easier on me, and it's going to make it so I don't get sloppy stain all over my boxes. I did all of the poly layers as well, and when that was cured, it's finally time to put my pieces together. You can see here I've got quite the operation going on in my dining room. We're going to lift our cabinet boxes up, apply glue to the edges of all the plywood where the face frames are going to go. Now I brush that across and actually let that first layer of glue dry because it is going to kind of seal that up and prevent the next layer of glue from all getting soaked into the edge of the plywood and just disappearing, not doing its job. So I pre-glue once, let that dry, and now this is the actual assembly. I glue the edges of my plywood where the face frame is going to go, and you want to get a good bead of glue so it squeezes out all around the edge. Then I place my face frame and I clamp it down. I'm using 36-inch bar clamps. I only have 2 of these, but I basically just clamp exactly where it needs to go and screw in through the pocket holes one at a time, making sure it's placed. For my face frames, I am going to do a larger reveal than typical. Usually you have a 1/4 inch reveal on each side of your face frames to account for paneling that covers up the unsightly edge of your cabinet boxes. But for mine, my panel is 3/4 inches thick, so you can see here that I really offset it to one side. Your glue should squeeze out and you can wipe that up after assembly. It's important to glue your face frames as well as screw them in tight because the face frames take the load of your doors, and your hinge is reliant on your face frame to be super strongly attached to your cabinet box. For the areas that I did not pre-drill pocket holes to pull the face frame tight against the box, I just clamped it for a while until the glue set up. This is how my finished cabinet box turned out. And the ones that have the drawers, I'm really excited to have that pull-out cutting board at the top, as demonstrated here. I'll share more details about my kitchen island build coming up soon, so don't forget to subscribe to Welcome to the Woods if you want to see how this project turns out. This is what one of the shelving boxes look like for the back side of the island. What do you guys think? I hope this video has been helpful for you. Tell me in the comments below if you've ever built cabinet boxes. Did you construct them a similar way? Do you have any tips for me going forward building my kitchen island from scratch? Thank you as always for watching Welcome to the Woods.